Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I've been to Europe a couple times, so I've got a passport. And passports famously are good for about 10 years. I believe it's 10 years. And after 10 years, you renew it and you get another one. And passports are kind of cool because it's a little record of where you've gone. And they stamp it and you can flip through there and see the stamps from different countries. It's kind of nice. But a woman ran into an issue, and I was not aware of this. And Steven sent me notes and Steve, check this out. Donovan Smoot wrote this for In the Know by Yahoo News. Woman not allowed to fly internationally despite having 6 months until her passport expired. It's so crazy that your passport expires before it expires. So there's a date on your passport that says here's when it expires. And so you think to yourself, well, as long as it's not expired, I can travel, right? Now, you wouldn't want to travel the day before it expires because then when you're overseas, your passport expired, you have trouble. Oh, your passport's expired. But she was traveling someplace with 6 months left on her passport, and she wasn't planning on being gone that long. And it turns out she wasn't allowed to use that passport for her purposes. So a woman recently went viral after being turned away from her international flight because her passport was going to expire. She had several months before it officially expired, but she told about how she and her family had planned a trip to celebrate her mother's birthday. And so they'd been planning this for quite some time, but she was told that if she didn't get a brand new passport within 24 hours, she'd then not be able to go on her trip. So she's at the airport, she's going along, and they go, oh, your passport's going to expire in 6 months. You cannot get on this flight. And so here's what's happening. Her passport was set to expire after her flight date, obviously, but there are some countries that require your passport to be valid for at least 6 months beyond the dates of the trip. So apparently her passport would have expired within 6 months of a portion of her trip. The United States has signed an agreement with several countries to waive this stipulation and let people fly as long as their passport's good for the dates of their trip. However, there are still nations that enforce this rule, such as China. So the thinking of some countries is that you might fly there with only 6 months on your passport, and even though your trip is only set for a week or two, you might overstay that and run into trouble. Now, I'm not sure who's going to overstay their visit to China by 5 months, but, this stipulation was news to many people who thought that you had until the expiration date on the passport before it actually expired. And I'll admit, I was one of them. And somebody commented and said, it's so crazy your passport expires before it expires. You're all acting like this is a well-known bit of information, replied somebody else. Now, the woman had no choice but to try and get a new passport the next day. And that turned out to be something she could do, but it was an adventure and an expensive one. Her local passport agency had no available appointments, so she had to fly to Buffalo to meet with someone who said they could get her a same-day passport. She was able to secure the passport, and then she booked a flight to meet up with her family and get to the airport. She actually made it in time to join them for the rest of the trip. When she got there, though, she had another problem because the airline had lost her luggage. So she had to make that executive decision. Do you get on the flight knowing your luggage might not be on the plane? Or do you poke around till they find it? So she has not posted a follow-up on this yet, but she's concerned that this vacation might be one of those vacations from hell, which, by the way, is a town in Michigan. There's a town in Michigan called Hell. There's also a town in Michigan called Paradise. And as people like to point out, you can actually drive from one to the other in the course of one day. But this brings to mind so many wacky travel stories. But I will tell you that U.S. passports, I have one, and I've traveled. In fact, I've actually had a couple, meaning I had one and it expired, and I got another one, that kind of thing. And I've been all over the place. I've been to Europe a couple of times. I've been to a bunch of different island countries in the Caribbean and so on. And also nowadays you have to use it when you go to Canada. But in the old days, you go to Canada and they just wave you through, but that was long before 9/11. But I can also tell you that there was a time when traveling in Europe, if you had an American passport, they would quite often just wave you through the line. And it happened more than once. And so there would be a country, and you'd be passing through immigration, and they'd have signs, and it would actually say, U.S. passports here, or U.S. passport holders here. And they actually have 2 or 3 different designations, depending on what country you were in or what country you're coming from and going to. And I remember getting in line, and U.S. passports are dark blue, and other countries, of course, are other colors, as you know from watching The Bourne Identity. And you have your blue passport in your hand, and I can think of at least 2 borders I crossed where I had it in my hand, ready to hand it to somebody. And as I got to the front, the guy just waves us through. And apparently, they've decided that was an okay thing to do. I know people who said that happened to them, and they're like, "But could you at least stamp this? Because I like having the stamps. And so the funny part was being waved through did not have the stamp indicating it passed through that location. So I don't know if that could cause trouble elsewhere. It never did. It never did. But I have told the story before, I think, about traveling to England a couple of years ago, and my travel partner. We got there and went to baggage claim, and my bags came out, and their bags did not come out. And so went and checked over at the airline help desk, and they said, "Oh, we have a problem." And nowadays, all the bags have got scan tags on them and stuff. And they go, "Your bag is back in Texas." And of course, Texas, that's not where we were. We were in England for 9 days, and the bags joined us on our trip the second to last day of the trip, and called the airline every single day and was repeatedly lied to by the airline. And so at one point in time, I got on the phone and they said, "Oh, your bags are in London and they'll be put on a taxi and brought to your hotel. You'll have them in an hour." So we wait an hour because we foolishly think the bags are showing up. Bags never show up. So a couple hours later, I call back and they go, "Oh, your bag is in Miami." I said, "Well, wait. The last time I called, they said it was in a taxi in England, in London." "Who told you that?" "You guys did." Now, of course, you get a different person each time you call. And here's a pro tip, by the way. I was calling the airlines people in England for help. And I found out I got better help, although it wasn't very useful, but I got better help if I called the number back in America from England. And the ironic part of this is that it was British Air. British Air. And I found out that if I called the British Air number in America, I got more responsive conversations. I was lied to repeatedly. They'd say, "Your bags are on a taxi right now headed to your hotel." And then a couple hours later, they said, "No, your bags are in Texas." And according to them, the bags were ping-ponging between Texas, Miami, and London, just doing this all day long. And I would love to have actually seen what the computer screen showed as to where those bags actually works. I'm sure they were scanned into the system somewhere. I suspect that they sat in Texas for the entire time. I don't know. But second to last day, they showed up at the hotel. But meanwhile, at one point in time, as I was speaking politely with the customer service rep from British Air, I said, "Well, here's the problem. The person to whom those bags belong doesn't exactly have a lot of clothing to travel around in over here, other than what she was wearing on the plane and what she had in her carry-on." And they said, "Oh, you can go out and shop for clothing and we'll reimburse you." And I said, "For how much?" And the woman said, "We don't actually have a number. It's just got to be reasonable." And they're concerned that if they give you an actual number, you're going to spend right up to it. And they're hoping that when they say it's got to be reasonable, that you will tone it down and probably spend less than they're willing to pay you. I will tell you that we went on a little shopping spree and went over to Covent Gardens, did a little shopping, saved all the receipts. When I got back, I wrote them a letter on my letterhead and said, "As per the conversation I had with so-and-so on this date, went out shopping because you guys had misplaced our bags and continually lied to us about it. And so these are the receipts. Reimburse us. Thank you." And I got a check about a week later. So it worked out in that sense. but it was a nightmare. So the real pro tip here is if you're flying internationally, do not put everything you own in the bags that get checked. Because always ask yourself what happens if the checked bags don't show up at the airport with us. And so you're going to want to make sure that you're wearing comfortable shoes on the plane. If not, have some in your carry-on, that kind of thing. So there you go. But here the story is the woman was not allowed to fly internationally because even though her passport was still valid, it was going to expire within 6 months. And some countries will not let you enter their country with a passport that's going to expire that shortly on the thinking that if you overstay it, there's going to be issues that they don't want to deal with. So it's from In the Know by Yahoo News. Donovan Smoot wrote that. Stephen of the PH Senate. Thanks a lot. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. You won't find reasonable men at the top of tall mountains.